Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. As always, we have a very important topic to talk about today, and that is the Israeli war plans for a potential strike on Iran. We're going to break them down. We're going to go through them, and I'm going to kind of explain to you why the options are incredibly limited, and some suggestions are just flat out idiotic and stupid. It's a very complex situation, but I'll be excited to hear what you guys think as well. Before we get into that, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Comment with your thoughts below on the peace process or a potential military strike on Iran. I love reading your comments. I've started responding to as many as I can, but there's a lot. So if I miss you, it's not personal. Just didn't get an opportunity, but I'm doing my best. Make sure to hit the bell so you always know when there's a new video coming. And now let's get into it. So as we all know, the United States of America is currently in negotiations with Iran over the enrichment of uranium and the country's nuclear program. This has been ongoing since President Donald Trump returned to office. There's been, I believe, 5 rounds of talks now. There's been some proposals that have been sent back and forth between the two sides. And the United States has been crystal clear that we favor a peace plan with Iran while we maintain the right to use our military potentially to take out Iran's facilities, which of course are deep underground. They're under mountains, would be very difficult to get to. The only country in the world that could hit those facilities, as we have discussed at length, is of course the United States. At the same time, Israel has been essentially begging the United States to forgo the diplomatic option, forgo a peace plan, and just rush out there and start dropping bombs all over Iran, because Israel likely does not have the capabilities to do it itself. So now we are starting to see a picture of what it might look like if Israel were to try to attempt a strike by itself. How would that unfold? What damage could they do? All of that and much more. Let's break it down. This report comes from Forbes, and it is a detailed report about what we might expect if Israel does indeed launch an attack. There's a couple pieces here. There's one piece that is, quite frankly, for lack of a better term, absolutely insane. But let's get started. I will throw up part 1 on the screen for you right now. It says, Iran's Air Force is antiquated, consisting mainly of 3rd and 4th generation F-4 Phantoms and F-14 Tomcat fighters inherited from the pre-1979 regime of the American allied Shah, as well as some Soviet-made MiG-29A Fulcrums acquired in the early 1990s. Tehran has yet to receive the 4th generation's Su-35 flankers it ordered from Russia earlier in this decade. Conversely, Israel has a much larger and more modern Air Force, the only one in the region to operate the 5th generation American F-35 Lightning II stealth fighter jet. Of course, as we know, the F-35 is an incredible platform. The version the Israelis have is a little bit degraded with its avionics compared to the one that we operate, the United States, but still an incredible piece of technology. Iran's nuclear facilities are scattered across the country. Undoubtedly, the program's 2 most important sites are the Natanz Enrichment Complex and the Fordo Fuel Enrichment Plant. Israel will look at all of Iran's enrichment facilities and other nuclear facilities, but the main targets are Fordo and Natanz. Recent open source analysis reveals that Iran's air defenses around Natanz are significantly weaker than previously expected. Nevertheless, there are likely limits to the damage that Israeli F-35I stealth jets attacking Natanz and Fordo could do to those respective sites, since they are buried underground and have been recently fortified. Of course, that's something I've talked about at length. That's not news to anyone watching this show. We all know that. There are extreme limits. And now let's get into part 2. I'll go ahead and throw this up on the screen for you again. It says, destroying such sites would require enormous bunker-busting munitions that Israel lacks. Again, who's been saying that over and over? Me. And heavy strategic bombers, which Israel also lacks to carry them. Again, a point I've made over and over again that no one else is. The U.S. Air Force's B-2 Spirit stealth bomber is currently the only aircraft certified to carry the 30,000-pound GBU-57AB massive ordnance penetrator. 6 of these were recently deployed on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean within striking range of Iran's nuclear sites. However, they have since been withdrawn and replaced with older, non-stealthy B-52s after Trump wrapped up the U.S. air campaign against the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen and pursued negotiations with Tehran. It's unclear if Israel would simply repeatedly strike Natanz and Fordo to render them at least temporarily unusable. It's conceivable It might use its F-35s to destroy any air defenses and clear a path for F-15s and F-16s to carry out bombing runs. It is also conceivable that it has an entirely different plan altogether. This is the part that is quite frankly crazy. On September 8, 2024, Israel launched Operation Many Ways, a commando raid against an Iranian missile production facility built underneath a mountain near Masaf in northwest Syria. Covered by airstrikes, Shaldog commandos were helicoptered to the site, which they promptly raided and destroyed with explosives planted inside that detonated as they flew away. It's unclear if Israel would attempt something similar against Natanz and Fordow, especially considering the much greater distance involved. Now that last part there, the commando strike in the mountains, to me is absolutely impossible. But let's go ahead and break down the realities, the drawbacks, the pros, the cons, and just how realistic this all is right now. First, let's start with the idea that Israel is going to launch a commando-style raid to take out the Natanz and Fordow facilities, the two most important facilities, deep underground, heavily defended. You would be facing thousands, probably 3,000-4,000 troops on the ground, but that's not the biggest issue. Yes, Israel did do that in Syria. Syria, a failed state, very little military presence, not hard to penetrate at all. Here's the problem. Here's why this plan makes no sense whatsoever. Those sites are both roughly 2,000 kilometers away from away from Israel, where they would launch a strike from, where they would be originating the strike. I'll go and throw up one of the screenshots of a map here on the screen for you to see. When you're talking about covering thousands of miles for a commando raid, you need assets and resources that quite simply the Israelis, yet again, do not have. There's a good example we can use here of when the United States of America did this, but on a scale that did not require to take out underground facilities. And that was the raid to get a Taliban leader shortly after 9/11. They launched from an aircraft carrier. They launched two groups of Delta Force operators, Air Force CCTs. One went to the compound about 800 miles away. Another one went to a makeshift landing zone in Afghanistan where they created essentially a rapidly made runway so the helicopters and planes could land, refuel, and they could exfil out of there. The difference is they weren't going up against potentially, again, 4,000 or 5,000 troops, and they wouldn't have to blow their way into a deep underground facility. There is absolutely no way to transport guys in a commando-style raid, like in helicopters, like Black Hawks, like they did in Syria. You're not going to be able to fly Black Hawks into Iran 2,000 kilometers away. Number one, Black Hawks that they have aren't stealthy. The ones we have are stealthy, but again, that's technology we're not really interested in sharing with absolutely anyone. So the idea that there's a commando-style raid on the table, they're going to launch from Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, wherever it might be, just pick a spot, and they're going to fly these helicopters all the way without detection into Iran. Then they would have to, you'd have to land thousands of your own guys, right? So how many helicopters are we talking here? Black Hawk can fit, 12 guys on it? How many Black Hawks are you going to need? Doesn't seem very realistic at all. The fact that that was even floated as a possible plan is absolutely crazy, because let's say, just for example, you make it there. You make it there in your non-stealth Black Hawk helicopters, you land at the sites, and then what happens? A massive, massive gunfight unfolds. You're going to have to blow your way through armored doors that are meant to withstand, again, bunker busters. You're not going to be able to exactly slap a breaching charge on those things and blow your way in. So the commando raid is never going to happen for many, many reasons. The distance, lack of equipment, lack of ability to actually cover that distance. It's not feasible. So now let's go to the airstrikes like they talked about with F-35s, F-15s, F-16s. That is something Israel could absolutely do. They could absolutely fly into Iran, try to soften up the targets by taking out early warning systems, surface-to-air missiles, things like that. That's all within the realm of possibilities. But the problem is, as we've talked about over and over again, they don't have the bombs or the aircrafts to actually take out the underground facilities. At best, they can take out stuff that is on the surface, supply lines, again, SAM sites, early warning systems, that could all be taken out. But this would be done, the goal of any mission would be to completely annihilate the facilities, which only the GBU-57 can do. It's a 30,000-pound bomb. I have seen some people say, well, why doesn't Israel just use their nukes to hit these sites? Israel is not going to launch a first strike nuclear attack against another country. That would create problems for them that you couldn't even imagine. They would have to stick to conventional weapons. And the problem is they don't have the conventional weapons to get it done. So to put it as simply as possible, any Israeli strike against Iran faces huge, huge obstacles if the United States does not do it. If they go in alone, their options are incredibly limited, and the amount of damage they can do would not be enough to stop the program. At best, they would be able to delay things for a little bit. They would never be able to fully stop it. And it's important that we're all on the same page and we understand this, because then it allows us to talk about the issue with clear eyes and a total understanding of what the options are. You have people out there who seem convinced that Israel can do this alone. I would ask them, with what gear, with what bombs, with what planes? The F-35 is great. Can't carry the munitions you would need to take out a facility buried under a mountain. Can't carry those bombs. Even the F-15, which can carry 4,000-pound bunker busters, is not going to be able to do enough damage to the facilities, even if you racked them one after another. Because then you would also have to repeatedly, over and over again, defeat Iranian air defenses, which, while not as good as what the U.S. has, can absolutely still shoot planes down. Now, you've got pilots you got to go in and rescue. These problems will compound, stack on top of each other, and it makes the situation incredibly difficult. The United States of America has more than enough ability to pull this off. No question about it. Israel, quite frankly, does not. And that doesn't mean that you're against Israel, doesn't mean that you think Iran's the good guys, but we're talking about military operations, military hardware, military equipment. We need to be living in reality, and that's the reality. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below how you think Israel should handle this situation. If you think they should attack or not, go in alone. Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell so you never miss a video. And as always, I'll see you all next time.